The fog rolled in over San Francisco, cloaking the spires of Bayview University in a ghostly haze. James Carter stood on the quad, his breath visible in the chilly September air of 1995, feeling like a man out of time. At 22, he was the heir to Carter Enterprises, a Silicon Valley titan in tech and real estate. To the world, he was a privileged playboy, notorious for his charm and reckless antics. But inside, James carried a burden no one could see. Memories of a life already lived, a life where his mistakes had cost him everything. In that other life, James had been a fool. He'd squandered his family's legacy, alienated those who mattered most, and watched Carter Enterprises crumble under the weight of his arrogance. The worst of it was what he'd done to Emily Thompson, the university's golden girl, whose family wielded influence across California's elite circles. A scandal, orchestrated by so-called friends, had ruined her reputation and sparked a feud with the Thompsons that destroyed his company. Now, inexplicably reborn into his younger self, James had a chance to rewrite that story. He wasn't sure how or why, but he knew one thing. This time, he'd do better. The campus buzzed with the start of the fall semester. Students hurried to classes, their voices mingling with the clatter of skateboards on the pavement. James adjusted his leather jacket, his eyes scanning the crowd. He spotted her near the library steps. Emily Thompson, radiant in a navy blazer and jeans, her auburn hair catching the morning light. She was laughing with friends, oblivious to the danger lurking nearby. In his past life, this was the day it all began, the day his friend Michael Reed set a trap that changed everything. James's heart raced as he pushed through the crowd, his memories sharp as a blade. He saw Michael, a wiry junior with a sly grin, slipping something into a red Solo cup at a frat party that night in Pacific Heights. The drug wasn't meant just for Emily. It was for James, too, to cloud his judgment and make him complicit in the scandal. The fallout had been catastrophic. Emily's humiliation, the Thompsons' wrath, and a chain of events that led to Carter Enterprises' collapse. James clenched his fists. Not this time. He followed Emily's group to a coffee shop on Fillmore Street, keeping his distance. The place was packed with students, the air thick with the scent of espresso and cinnamon rolls. Emily sat at a corner table, her friends gossiping about the upcoming homecoming game. James lingered near the counter, pretending to study the menu, his eyes locked on Michael, who was chatting up a barista. The guy was smooth, but James knew his game. He'd been Michael's pawn once, goaded into chasing Emily for sport. Never again. "Hey, Carter," a voice called. It was Tom Hayes, a frat brother with a penchant for trouble. "You joining us at the Sigma Chi Bash tonight? Gonna be epic." James forced a smile. "Maybe. Got some stuff to handle first." Tom shrugged and wandered off, leaving James to focus. He needed to get to that party before Michael made his move. The Sigma Chi house in Pacific Heights was a sprawling Victorian, its windows glowing with neon lights as music thumped into the night. James arrived late, slipping through the crowd of sweaty bodies and beer-soaked floors. He spotted Emily near the makeshift bar, her expression wary as she clutched a soda. Michael was there, too, holding 2 cups, his smile too eager. James's stomach churned. He remembered this moment. Michael handing Emily a spiked drink, then offering James one to loosen him up. The rest was a blur of bad decisions. "Yo, Mike," James said, clapping a hand on Michael's shoulder with enough force to make him flinch. "What's in those cups?" Michael's grin faltered. "Just punch, man. Chill." James leaned closer, his voice low. "Don't play me. I saw you mess with her drink." The crowd's noise faded as Michael's eyes darted to Emily, who was now talking to a friend. "You're paranoid, Carter," he hissed. "Thought you wanted to have fun with her." James grabbed the cups, sniffing them. The faint chemical tang confirmed his suspicions. "You're done," he said, shoving Michael against the wall. "You try this again, and I'll make sure everyone knows what you are." Michael squirmed, but James's grip held firm. "Fine, whatever," Michael muttered, slipping away into the crowd. James dumped the drinks into a trash can, his hands shaking. Emily hadn't noticed the exchange, but she was safe for now. He caught her eye as she glanced his way, her expression a mix of curiosity and disdain. "What's your deal, Carter?" she called, stepping closer. You've been staring all night. James hesitated. In his past life, he'd have flashed a cocky grin and made a move. Now, he just wanted her trust. Just making sure you're okay, he said. This place can get wild. Emily raised an eyebrow. I can handle myself. Stay out of my way. She turned back to her friends, leaving James with a pang of regret. He'd hurt her before, and rebuilding that bridge would take time. The next morning, James sat in his dorm room, staring at a photo of his father, Robert Carter, clipped from a Forbes article. Carter Enterprises was at a crossroads, teetering on the edge of a financial gamble known as the Pacific Bonds 327 deal. In his past life, Robert had followed the advice of greedy advisors, short-selling bonds that tanked the company when a market flipped. The loss, coupled with the Thompsons' retaliation, had been the beginning of the end. James couldn't let it happen again. He drove his sleek Mustang to Carter Enterprises headquarters in Palo Alto, a glass-and-steel monolith overlooking the bay. The boardroom was tense, with executives debating the bond strategy. Robert, a stern man with graying temples, listened as Laura Bennett, his sharp-witted assistant, pushed for the short sell. "It's a sure thing," Laura said, her eyes flicking to James, who'd been invited as a courtesy. "We could clear $300 million. James stood, ignoring the skeptical glances. "We're not shorting," he said. "We buy in. The market's about to surge." The room fell silent. Laura scoffed. "You're a college kid, James. Leave this to the adults." Robert raised a hand, his gaze piercing. "Explain yourself." James took a breath, his past life knowledge guiding him. "The bond market's being manipulated. Shorting will tank us when the Feds step in. Buying now secures us $100 million minimum and protects smaller investors." The executives murmured, unconvinced. Robert studied his son, sensing something different, resolve, not rebellion. "You're staking our reputation on this," he warned. "I know," James replied. "Trust me." After heated debate, Robert relented, authorizing the buy-in. Laura shot James a look of grudging respect, but her loyalty to Robert made her wary. "Don't screw this up, kid," she muttered. Days later, the market moved as James predicted. Carter Enterprises netted $100 million, a triumph that stunned the board. Robert called James to his office, a corner suite with views of the Santa Cruz Mountains. "How'd you know?" he asked, pouring 2 glasses of bourbon. James shrugged, unable to reveal the truth. "Just a hunch, Dad. I've been paying attention." Robert nodded, pride flickering in his eyes. "You're stepping up. About time." But the victory came with complications. The Thompsons, who held stakes in rival firms, took notice. Emily's father, Charles Thompson, a tech mogul with a reputation for ruthlessness, sent a message through a mutual contact: "Tell the Carters to watch their backs." James knew the Thompsons' power, real estate, venture capital, political connections. In his past life, their vengeance had been relentless, fueled by Emily's humiliation. He had to keep her safe and prove he wasn't the enemy. Back at Bayview, James crossed paths with Sarah Miller, a classmate whose quiet strength had always intrigued him. In his past life, Sarah had been his wife, a marriage marred by his selfishness. She'd suffered in silence, her dreams crushed by his neglect and her mother's death from a treatable illness. Now, seeing her at the library, her face drawn from late-night shifts at a Mission District diner, James felt a surge of guilt. He couldn't undo the past, but he could help her now. "Hey, Sarah," he said, approaching her table piled with textbooks. She looked up, wary. "What do you want, Carter?" Her voice was tired, her eyes shadowed. James hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I heard you're working crazy hours. If you need a job, Carter Enterprises is hiring assistants. Good pay, flexible hours." Sarah frowned. "Why me? You don't even know me." James met her gaze. "I know you're smart, and I think you deserve a break." Sarah's skepticism was palpable, but desperation won out. "I'll think about it," she said, returning to her books. James left her his card, hoping she'd take the chance. The San Francisco skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Carter Enterprises' Palo Alto headquarters, but James Carter felt no ease. It was late September 1995, and the Pacific Bonds 327 deal had just netted the company $100 million, a triumph that had silenced doubters and earned him a seat at the grown-ups table. Yet, his past life memories whispered warnings. This was only the beginning. In that other life, Carter Enterprises had been bled dry by internal corruption and crushed by the Thompsons' vengeance. James couldn't rest until those threats were neutralized. He leaned back in his father's leather chair, borrowed for the evening while Robert Carter was at a charity gala in Nob Hill. The office smelled of polished wood and ambition, a stark contrast to the chaos of James's college days. At 22, he was still a Bayview University senior, but his foresight from a previous life made him play chess while others played checkers. The bond deal success had bought him credibility, but the real work, saving the company, protecting Emily Thompson, helping Sarah Miller, was just starting. His phone buzzed, snapping him out of his thoughts. It was Laura Bennett, Robert's assistant and a reluctant ally. "James, you're still here?" Her voice crackled through the line. "The board's buzzing about your stunt with the bonds. Some call it genius. Others think you got lucky. Watch your back." James smirked. "Thanks, Laura. Any word on Michael Reed's father?" Laura paused. "George Reed's been quiet, but I got people digging. If he's skimming, we'll find it." James nodded, though she couldn't see. "Keep me posted. And Laura, don't tell Dad yet." George Reed, a senior executive in Carter Enterprises' logistics division, was a ticking bomb. In James's past life, George had embezzled millions, weakening the company for the Thompsons' attack. His son, Michael, was no better, having tried to drug Emily at the Sigma Chi party. James had stopped that scheme, but Michael's defiance in the parking lot hinted at a larger plan. Someone was pulling their strings, and James needed proof before making a move. A knock at the door startled him. Sarah Miller stood there, clutching a manila folder, her face pale under the fluorescent lights. "You said to drop by if I decided," she said, her voice steady despite her nervous fidgeting. James waved her in. "Sit. You're taking the job?" Sarah nodded, sliding the folder across the desk. "My resume. I'm not charity, Carter. I'll earn my keep." James skimmed the pages. Honor roll, double major in business and economics, 3 part-time jobs to pay for her mother's medical bills. In his past life, Sarah's grit had been his anchor, until his selfishness drove her away. "You're hired," he said. "Start Monday. Assistant to me, $25 an hour, flexible hours." Sarah's eyes widened. "That's generous." "Why me?" James leaned forward, choosing his words carefully. "Because you're smarter than half the suits here, and I need someone I can trust." It wasn't the full truth. He owed her for the pain he'd caused in another life, but it was enough. Sarah hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, but no favors. I'll pull my weight." James smiled. "Deal. Laura will set you up." As Sarah left, James's thoughts drifted to her mother, Ellen Miller, whose kidney disease had drained their savings. In his past life, Ellen died because Sarah couldn't afford treatment. This time, James had already funneled $10,000 through the company's charity arm to cover her hospital bills, but he knew it wasn't enough. He needed to find a long-term solution without Sarah suspecting his motives. She was proud, and pity would push her away. The next morning, James drove to Bayview's campus, the Mustang's engine purring through the foggy streets of Pacific Heights. He had a finance seminar, but his real goal was to keep an eye on Emily. She'd been distant since their talk at Fisherman's Wharf, her distrust rooted in his playboy reputation. James couldn't blame her. In his past life, he'd been the guy who chased her for sport, egged on by Michael and his cronies. Now he just wanted her safe, and maybe, someday, her respect. He spotted her outside the lecture hall, surrounded by friends. Emily's poise was effortless, her tailored coat and scarf screaming old money. But her eyes, sharp and guarded, locked onto James as he approached. "Stalking me now, Carter," she quipped, her friends giggling. James kept his cool. "Just here for class. You okay after the party?" Emily's smile faltered, sensing his sincerity. "Fine, but don't think you're my knight in shining armor." She turned away, but James caught a flicker of curiosity in her glance. Progress, he thought. Inside the lecture hall, Professor Daniels droned about market volatility, but James's mind was on Carter Enterprises' next move. The bond deal had stabilized finances, but the company needed a game-changer to compete with Silicon Valley's titans. In his past life, James had ignored an emerging tech, personal mobile communication, a low-cost network that could make cell phones affordable for the average American. In 1995, mobile phones were clunky luxury items costing thousands. James saw an opportunity, a system like Japan's personal handy phone system, rebranded for the U.S. as Nextel. Affordable, portable, revolutionary. After class, he headed to the library to research Japanese tech firms. A struggling company, Technova, held the patents he needed. If Carter Enterprises could secure a deal, Nextel could reshape the telecom landscape. But it would take capital, connections, and nerve, especially with the Thompsons circling. Emily's father, Charles, ran Capital Ventures, a venture capital firm with deep ties to tech. A partnership could fast-track Nextel, but it meant navigating Emily's skepticism and Charles's ruthlessness. As James flipped through a Business Week article on Technova, his phone rang. It was Laura, her voice urgent. "James, we've got a problem. George Reed's been moving funds, $2 million, to an offshore account. I traced it to a shell company in the Caymans." James's jaw tightened. "Proof?" Laura hesitated. "Bank records, emails, but it's shaky without a forensic audit. If we tip him off, he'll cover his tracks." James thought fast. "Sit on it for now. I'll handle it." He hung up, his mind racing. George's embezzlement was just the tip of the iceberg. In his past life, George had siphoned $80 million, leaving Carter Enterprises vulnerable. James needed to act, but not yet. That evening, James met Sarah at a diner in the Mission District, where she still worked her final shifts before starting at Carter Enterprises. The place smelled of grease and coffee, its neon sign flickering in the dusk. Sarah slid into the booth, her apron stained. "You didn't have to come here," she said, embarrassed. James shrugged. "Wanted to see where you've been holding down the fort. How's your mom?" Sarah's face clouded. "Not great. The hospital's pushing for payment, and her meds are a lot." James nodded, careful not to overstep. "The job's got health benefits. Might help." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "You're not my savior, Carter." James raised his hands. "Just offering options." Their talk was cut short by a commotion at the counter. A sleazy customer, reeking of whiskey, was harassing a waitress. Sarah stepped in, her voice firm. "Back off, pal." The guy sneered, grabbing her arm. James was on his feet in an instant, pulling the man away. "Touch her again, and you're eating pavement," he growled. The guy backed down, muttering curses as he stumbled out. Sarah glared at James. "I had it under control." James grinned. "Sure you did. Just speeding things up." For the first time, Sarah cracked a smile. "Your trouble, Carter." Later, as they walked to Sarah's bus stop, James broached a delicate topic. "I know a guy at UCSF Medical Center. Top kidney specialist. I can get your mom an appointment." Sarah stopped, her eyes searching his. "Why are you doing this?" "Really?" James hesitated, the weight of his past life pressing down. "Because I've seen what happens when people don't get help. I don't want that for you." Sarah nodded slowly, unconvinced but grateful. "I'll think about it." Back at his apartment, James pored over Laura's intel on George Reed. The evidence was damning but incomplete. George wasn't acting alone. His son, Michael, was too bold for a lone operator. James suspected a link to the Thompsons, but that was a stretch without proof. In his past life, Michael's betrayal had been personal, driven by jealousy and greed. Now, James saw him as a pawn in a larger game. He needed to bait Michael into slipping up. The next day, James attended a Bayview fundraiser at the Fairmont Hotel, a glitzy affair packed with San Francisco's elite. Emily was there, representing Capital Ventures, her elegance drawing every eye. James approached, a glass of club soda in hand. The Oakland warehouse's shadows clung to James Carter as he crouched behind a stack of crates, his breath shallow in the damp October air. It was past midnight, and the meeting he'd overheard between George Reed, Carter Enterprises' corrupt executive, and an unknown contact had ended abruptly. George's desperate plea, "You promised me protection," echoed in James's mind, but the mystery figure's identity remained elusive, their voice too muffled to pinpoint. James's past life memories screamed danger. In that other life, George's embezzlement had gutted the company, and someone powerful had been pulling the strings. Was it the Thompsons? Or another player? He needed answers, but tonight had only deepened the puzzle. Slipping back to his Mustang, James drove through San Francisco's fog-draped streets, the city's lights blurring like his thoughts. The Pacific Bonds 327 deal's $100 million windfall had stabilized Carter Enterprises, but the company was still vulnerable. George Reed's $2 million offshore transfer was just the start. James knew from his past life that George had siphoned $80 million over years, leaving the company ripe for the Thompsons' attack. His son, Michael Reed, was another threat, his failed attempt to drug Emily Thompson at the Sigma Chi party a prelude to worse. And then there was Sarah Miller, whose mother's illness weighed on James's conscience. He'd vowed to help her, not just for redemption, but because her pain in his past life haunted him. By morning, James was back at Carter Enterprises' Palo Alto headquarters, a glass fortress humming with ambition. His office, a corner suite with views of the Santa Cruz Mountains, was cluttered with reports on Technova, a Japanese firm holding patents for a low-cost mobile communication system. James called it Nextel, a nod to the real-world brand but reimagined as a 1995 game-changer. Unlike the bulky $2,000 cell phones of the era, Nextel would be affordable, $500 handsets, $30 monthly plans, making mobile access a reality for middle-class Americans. In his past life, he'd ignored this opportunity, letting rivals dominate. This time, he'd seize it. Laura Bennett knocked, her sharp eyes scanning him. "You look like hell, James." Late night, he waved off her concern, handing her a Technova dossier. "We're meeting their reps in Tokyo next week. I need you to set it up. Flights, translators, the works." Laura raised an eyebrow. "Mobile tech? That's a leap from bonds." James nodded. "It's the future. If we nail this, Carter Enterprises leads the pack." Laura skimmed the dossier, skeptical but intrigued. "And George Reed?" she asked. James's jaw tightened. "Keep digging." Quietly, she nodded, exiting with a glance that said she was watching him as closely as he was watching George. At Bayview University, James balanced his senior year with corporate chess. In a marketing class, he spotted Emily Thompson, her auburn hair pulled back as she debated brand strategy with the professor. Since their talk at Fisherman's Wharf, Emily had thawed slightly, but her distrust lingered. She was Capital Ventures' rising star, her father Charles Thompson's protege, and James knew her firm could fund Nextel's rollout. A partnership was logical, but convincing Emily meant overcoming his past life sins, chasing her for sport, letting Michael's scheme nearly ruin her. After class, James caught her in the quad. "Got a minute, Thompson?" Emily sighed, clutching her books. "If it's another apology, save it." James grinned. "Business, not personal. Carter Enterprises is launching a mobile network. Affordable, mass market. We need investors." Emily's eyes narrowed, intrigued despite herself. "You're serious? That's a crowded field. Motorola, AT&T. James leaned closer. "They're pricing out the average Joe. We won't. Think $500 phones, $30 plans." Emily's skepticism softened. "Send me a proposal. No promises." It was a start. Back at the office, Sarah Miller's first day as James's assistant was a whirlwind. She arrived in a crisp blazer, her nerves masked by determination. "I pulled the Technova financials you asked for," she said, handing him a folder. "They're bleeding cash, $50 million in debt." James skimmed the numbers, impressed. "Nice work, Miller. You're fast." Sarah shrugged. "I don't mess around." Her efficiency reminded James of his past life wife, whose potential he'd squandered. He pushed the thought aside, focusing on her mother, Ellen, whose kidney disease was worsening. He'd arranged a UCSF specialist consult, but Sarah didn't know yet. He'd tell her when the time was right. That evening, James met Laura at a diner in Redwood City, away from prying eyes. She slid him a USB drive, cutting edge for $19.95. "George Reed's emails," she whispered. "He's funneling funds to a shell company, but there's a bigger player. Someone's promising him a board seat at a rival firm, if he delivers Carter Enterprises' real estate portfolio. James's blood ran cold. In his past life, George had mortgage company assets for $500 million, planning to flee. "Who's the contact?" he asked. Laura shook her head. "Encrypted. We need more time." James pocketed the drive. "Get it. And watch Michael read. He's not just a frat boy." The Tokyo trip came fast. James, Laura, and Sarah flew business class. The 747s hung a backdrop to their strategy session. Technova's patents were a bargain at $3 million, but their execs were cagey, sensing Carter's hunger. "Your market lacks infrastructure," a Technova VP said in their Shinjuku office, his English clipped. James countered, "We'll build it. You need cash. We need tech. $2.5 million, exclusive U.S. rights." Sarah's real-time analysis, projected on a laptop, backed him up. Market growth, consumer trends, costs. The VP hesitated, impressed by the young American's nerve. "We'll consider," he said. James knew they'd bite. Technova was desperate. Back in San Francisco, the deal's momentum clashed with personal stakes. Sarah's mother was hospitalized after a collapse, her doctor warning of kidney failure. James found Sarah at UCSF, her eyes hollow. "They're kicking her out," she said, clutching a bill for $15,000. James acted fast, wiring funds through the company's charity arm. "It's covered," he told her, bracing for pushback. Sarah's voice shook. "I'm not your project, James." He met her gaze. "You're my friend. Let me help." Sarah nodded, tears brimming, and James felt a flicker of redemption. Ellen's survival could rewrite Sarah's future. Meanwhile, Emily's response to the Nextel proposal was a coffee meeting at a Soma cafe. "Your numbers are solid," she admitted, stirring her latte. "But Capital Ventures wants 51% for $30 million. James laughed. 40%, and we're partners." Emily smirked, her guard dropping. "You're cocky, Carter. I'll take it to my dad." Their chemistry crackled, but James kept it professional, haunted by his past life betrayal of her trust. Michael Reed's shadow loomed larger. James caught him tailing Sarah near the office, his smirk chilling. "Stay away from her," James warned, grabbing Michael's collar in an alley. Michael sneered. "You're digging your grave, Carter. Dad's got friends you can't touch." James let him go, but the threat confirmed his fears. The Reeds were planning something big. Laura's next report was grim. George had escalated, moving $5 million, and Michael was linked to a shady club deal involving Emily's cousin, a Thompson heir. James smelled a setup. The Nextel prototype arrived, a sleek, palm-sized phone with crystal-clear calls. James demoed it for the board, earning applause but also envy. "This could be bigger than Apple," one exec whispered. Robert Carter pulled James aside. "You're shaking things up, son. Be careful who you trust." James nodded, sensing his father's unease with George Reed's silence. At a Bayview party, Michael struck. He cornered Emily, spinning lies about James's role in the Sigma Chi incident. "He set you up," Michael hissed, offering her a drink. Emily, wary, refused, but Michael's aggression grew. James intervened, shoving Michael back. "Walk away, Mike." The crowd parted, tension thick. Emily's eyes flashed. "Is he lying, Carter?" James shook his head. "He spiked your drink that night. I stopped him." Emily hesitated, then nodded. "I believe you." Michael fled, but James knew he'd retaliate. Sarah's mother's condition stabilized, but a kidney transplant was urgent. James leveraged Carter Enterprises' network, calling in favors from hospital boards. At UCSF, he met Sarah, who was overwhelmed. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. James brushed it off. "Just keep kicking ass at work." Her smile warmed him, but he kept his distance, mindful of her past life pain. Emily's father, Charles, greenlit the Nextel partnership, but with strings. Capital Ventures wanted oversight. At a tense meeting in their Embarcadero office, Charles eyed James. "You're bold, kid. Don't screw this up." The San Francisco dawn painted the Bay Bridge in hues of gold, but James Carter felt no warmth as he stood on the balcony of his Embarcadero apartment. It was November 1995, and the past month had been a whirlwind. His arm, slashed by Michael Reed's switchblade, was healing, the stitches a faint reminder of the night he'd protected Emily Thompson. Carter Enterprises was riding high after securing Technova's patents for Nextel, the low-cost mobile network poised to revolutionize American telecom. Yet, James's past life memories kept him on edge. In that other life, this was when the cracks widened. George Reed's embezzlement crippled the company, Sarah Miller's mother died, and the Thompsons' vengeance sealed his downfall. This time, he was fighting to rewrite that fate. James sipped black coffee, his mind racing. The Nextel prototype, a sleek, $500 handset with crystal-clear calls, had wowed the board, and the partnership with Capital Ventures, Emily's father's firm, ensured funding. But George Reed, the corrupt logistics exec, was escalating his scheme, funneling millions to offshore accounts. His son, Michael, was in custody after the attack, but James suspected a bigger player orchestrating their moves. Sarah's mother, Ellen Miller, was stable at UCSF Medical Center, but her kidney failure demanded a transplant, a needle in a haystack. And Emily, her care in the hospital had sparked something, but her trust was fragile, built on the ruins of his past life mistakes. At Carter Enterprises' Palo Alto headquarters, the Nextel launch was in overdrive. James strode into the war room, a conference space buzzing with engineers, marketers, and Sarah Miller, his assistant, who juggled spreadsheets with fierce precision. "Morning, team," James said, scanning the room. "Launch is in 3 weeks. Where are we?" A lead engineer, Karen Patel, projected a map. "We got 50 base stations in San Francisco, Seattle, and Chicago. Handsets are in production, 10,000 units ready, 50,000 more by December." Sarah chimed in. "Retail partners are locked. Best Buy, Radio Shack. Pre-orders hit 5,000. James nodded, impressed. "Marketing," a young exec, Tom Gwynn, grinned. "Ads drop next week. Billboards, TV spots. We're pitching Nextel, talk for less." Laura Bennett, Robert Carter's assistant, pulled James aside. "Board's nervous," she whispered. "Nextel's burning cash, $20 million already." George Reed's whispering were overextended. James's jaw tightened. George's sabotage was subtle, sowing doubt while he siphoned funds. "Keep him in check," James said. "Any progress on his accounts?" Laura nodded. "We got $5 million traced to the Caymans. Email suggests he's meeting a contact tomorrow, Pier 39, noon." James's eyes narrowed. "I'll be there." At Bayview University, James balanced classes with corporate chaos. In an econ seminar, Emily Thompson sat 2 rows ahead, her focus on the professor unbroken. Since the hospital, she'd been warmer but cautious, her Capital Ventures role tying their fates. After class, James caught her in the hall. "Launch prep's insane," he said, falling in his step. "You coming to the kickoff?" Emily smirked. "Depends. You planning to get stabbed again?" James chuckled. "I'll stick to speeches." Her smile faded. "Dad's pushing for more control. You want a board seat." James tensed. Charles Thompson's ambition could derail Nextel. Or worse, echo the Thompsons' past life vengeance. "Let's talk it out," he said. "Dinner Friday?" Emily hesitated, then nodded. "Business only, Carter." Sarah's desk at Carter Enterprises was a fortress of order, but her eyes betrayed exhaustion. James dropped by with coffee. "You're killing it, Miller," he said. "How's your mom?" Sarah sighed, accepting the cup. "Stable, but the transplant list is a nightmare. 6 months, maybe a year." James knew from his past life that Ellen hadn't survived that wait. "I've got contacts," he said. "Let me make calls." Sarah's gaze hardened. "I'm not your charity case." James leaned closer. "You're not. But Ellen's family, and I don't let family down." Sarah softened, nodding. "Thanks, James." That night, James pored over Laura's intel on George Reed. The $5 million was part of a larger scheme, $10 million total, with emails hinting at a $500 million asset grab. George was colluding with a rival, possibly linked to Capital Ventures, though James had no proof. In his past life, this betrayal had left Carter Enterprises defenseless. He texted Laura, set up a forensic audit. Quietly, her reply was swift. On it. "Watch your back." Pier 39 was a tourist trap, its seafood stalls and sea lion barks masking George Reed's noon meeting. James blended in, a baseball cap low, watching from a bench. George, in a gray suit, argued with a man in sunglasses, mid-40s, East Coast accent. "You're late," George snapped. The kids sniffing around. The man smirked. "Handle him, or you're out." James snapped photos with a disposable camera, his pulse racing. The man's face was unfamiliar, but his confidence screamed power. As they parted, James tailed George to a parking lot, but a crowd blocked his view. He cursed, retreating. The photos would have to do. Back at the office, Sarah handed James a report. "Technova's pushing for a faster rollout," she said. "They're broke, need our cash." James nodded. "We'll front $1 million, but they deliver 20,000 more units." Sarah's efficiency was a lifeline, but her strain worried him. He called UCSF's transplant coordinator, pulling strings for Ellen's priority status. The coordinator was blunt. "It's a long shot, Mr. Carter. We're trying." James hung up, frustration gnawing. He couldn't lose Ellen again. Friday's dinner with Emily was at a Soma bistro, its dim lights softening her guarded edges. She wore a black dress, her presence commanding. "Dad's serious about the board seat," she said, sipping wine. "He thinks you're reckless." James leaned back. "And you?" Emily's eyes met his. "I think you're different, but I don't trust different yet." James nodded, respecting her candor. "Nextel's my shot to prove it. 40% for capital ventures, no board seat." "Fair." Emily smiled faintly. "I'll pitch it. No promises." Their talk shifted to college, music, Nirvana, Tupac, and for a moment, James forgot the stakes. As they parted, Emily's hand brushed his. "Don't screw this up, Carter," she said, her tone. The San Francisco skyline shimmered under a rare December sun, its crisp light reflecting off the glass towers of the financial district. James Carter stood on the roof of Carter Enterprises' Palo Alto headquarters, gripping a Nextel handset, the sleek, $500 device that was about to reshape American telecom. It was December 1995, and the Nextel launch was hours away, with stores in San Francisco, Seattle, Chicago, and Los Angeles poised to open. Yet, James's heart was heavy. His past life memories, a constant guide through this second chance, warned that victory was fragile. In that other life, Carter Enterprises had collapsed under George Reed's betrayal. Sarah Miller's mother had died, and Emily Thompson's hatred had sealed his ruin. Today, he stood on the brink of rewriting that fate, but the stakes had never been higher. The past weeks had been a crucible. James's arm, scarred from Michael Reed's knife attack, was healed, but the Reed's shadow loomed. George Reed, the corrupt logistics executive, had siphoned $10 million, with plans to mortgage company assets for $500 million, orchestrated by Victor Malone, a shadowy East Coast financier. Sarah's mother, Ellen Miller, teetered on the edge of kidney failure, a transplant her only hope. Emily, now a partner through Capital Ventures, was warming to James, but her trust was a tightrope. Nextel's success could cement his redemption, or its failure could unravel everything. Inside, the war room buzzed with final preparations. Sarah Miller, James's assistant, stood at a whiteboard, tracking logistics. "Best Buy's reporting lines already forming," she said, her voice steady despite the bags under her eyes. "Chicago's sold-out pre-orders." Karen Patel, the lead engineer, added, "Base stations are at 98% uptime." "We're ready." James clapped his hands. "This is it, team. Today we changed the game." His confidence masked a gnawing fear. George Reed's endgame was near, and James needed to stop him before Nextel's spotlight exposed the company's vulnerabilities. Laura Bennett, Robert Carter's assistant, slipped James a folder. "Malone's meeting George tonight," she whispered. "Embarcadero, 8 p.m. I've got the audit, $12 million gone, with contracts ready to flip our real estate to Malone's shell company." James's jaw clenched. In his past life, this deal had gutted Carter Enterprises, leaving it prey to the Thompsons' wrath. "Call the feds," he said. "Set a trap." Laura nodded, her loyalty now fully his. "Your dad's on board." "He's shaken." James understood. Robert had trusted George for decades. Betrayal cut deep. At Bayview University, James caught Emily Thompson after a finance seminar. Her black coat and scarf framed her auburn hair, her presence a magnet for whispers. Launch day. Huh, she said, falling into step. Nervous, Carter? James grinned. Terrified. You coming? Emily's eyes sparkled. Capital Ventures has $30 million riding on this. I'll be there. Their partnership had grown beyond business. Late-night strategy sessions, shared laughs over coffee. But her guard was still up, scarred by James's past life pursuit of her. Dinner after? He asked. Emily hesitated, then smiled. If you don't crash and burn. Sarah's call shattered the moment. James, Mom's critical, she said, her voice breaking. They found a kidney, Seattle, but it's now or never. James's heart leapt. In his past life, Ellen's death had broken Sarah, his then-wife, whose pain he'd ignored. He'd leveraged a Thompson contact to find the donor, a debt he owed Emily. I'm on my way, he said, sprinting to his Mustang. At UCSF Medical Center, Sarah paced the waiting room, her face ashen. They're prepping her, she said. I can't lose her. James hugged her, his voice firm. You won't. I've got you. He'd wired $50,000 for transport and surgery, but Sarah didn't know. Her pride would reject it. Emily arrived, surprising them. I heard, she said, squeezing Sarah's hand. My dad pulled strings with the donor network. Sarah's eyes welled. Thank you. James met Emily's gaze, gratitude unspoken. Her presence, bridging their worlds, felt like a turning point. The surgeon emerged hours later, exhausted but smiling. It's a success. She's stable. Sarah collapsed into James's arms, sobbing. She's okay, she whispered. James felt a weight lift. Ellen's survival was a victory over his past. The Nextel launch kicked off at a San Francisco Best Buy, its parking lot packed with eager buyers. James, in a tailored suit, stood on a makeshift stage, the handset gleaming under lights. Today, Nextel makes communication affordable, he said, his voice carrying. No more $2,000 phones. No more $100 bills. This is for everyone. The crowd cheered, cameras flashing. Emily, in the front row, clapped, her pride evident. Sarah, beside her, beamed, her relief palpable. By noon, reports flooded in. 10,000 units sold, stores mobbed in Seattle and Chicago. Nextel was a hit. But George Reed's shadow loomed. James slipped away, meeting Laura at the Embarcadero's Pier 7. FBI agents briefed on the audit hidden nearby. George arrived, nervous, clutching a briefcase. Victor Malone, in a black overcoat, joined him, his East Coast drawl unmistakable. You're late, Malone said. Assets secured? George nodded. Signed. $500 millions yours. James signaled the feds, who swarmed in, cuffs clicking. George Reed, Victor Malone, you're under arrest for embezzlement and fraud. An agent barked. George's face crumpled, but Malone's eyes locked on James, cold and calculating. You're a dead man, kid, he hissed as they were led away. Back at headquarters, Robert Carter faced the fallout. George was my friend, he said, his voice hollow. James handed him the audit. He sold us out. Malone wanted our land for a rival tech park. Robert nodded, pride mixing with pain. You saved us, son. The arrests made headlines, cementing Nextel's narrative as a triumph over corruption. James's past life knowledge had paid off. Carter Enterprises was safe. That evening, James met Emily in North Beach Trattoria, its candlelit tables a world away from corporate chaos. She wore a red dress, her guard lower than ever. You pulled it off, she said, raising her glass. Nextel's the talk of Silicon Valley. James clinked his glass to hers. Couldn't have done it without you. Their talk flowed, her dreams of running Capital Ventures, his hope to build something lasting. I misjudged you, Emily admitted. You're not the guy I thought. James leaned closer. I was, but I'm trying to be better for you. Her smile was tentative but real. Don't push your luck, Carter. Sarah's mother recovered steadily, her new kidney a lifeline. At UCSF, Sarah invited James to visit. Ellen, frail but smiling, gripped his hand. You saved my girl, she said. James shook his head. She's the strong one. Sarah, watching, felt a pang. She'd grown close to James, but his focus on Emily was clear. "You're a good friend," she said later, her voice steady. James nodded, guilt flickering. In his past life, he'd hurt her most. Keeping her safe meant keeping his distance. The Reeds' downfall was complete. Michael, released on bail, faced charges for assault and conspiracy. George and Malone were indicted, their scheme exposed. James uncovered Malone's ties to a rival tech consortium, not the Thompsons, easing his fears of Emily's family. Charles Thompson, impressed by Nextel's $1 billion valuation, invited James to his Marin County estate. "You've got guts," Charles said over scotch. "But hurt my daughter, and you're done." James met his gaze. "I'd rather die." Charles laughed, a grudging respect forming. At Bayview's winter formal, James and Emily shared a dance, her hand warm in his. "This doesn't mean I like you," she teased, her eyes betraying her. James grinned. "Sure it doesn't." Their kiss, soft and fleeting, sealed a new beginning. His past life sins, chasing her, hurting Sarah, losing the company, felt distant though not forgotten. Sarah, watching from the sidelines, smiled bittersweetly. She'd found her footing, her mother safe, her career rising. James had given her that, and it was enough. As Nextel's sales soared, 100,000 units by January, James stood on his balcony, the city's lights a testament to his second chance. Carter Enterprises thrived, Sarah was whole, and Emily was by his side. Yet his past life memories whispered caution. Redemption was earned daily. Malone's parting threat lingered, and new rivals eyed Nextel's crown. James gripped the handset, resolve hardening. He'd fought for this future, and he'd fight to keep it.